It was 2 in the morning, and the blare of sirens had jolted me awake from a restless sleep. My heart hammered against my ribs, fueled by a sudden, chilling premonition. As a television reporter, the most heart-stopping event I'd ever covered was someone threatening to jump from a bridge. When the tip came in, I grabbed my gear and my seasoned cameraman, Sam, and raced to the Century Bridge. There, silhouetted against the pre-dawn sky, sat a man on the railing. His back was tall and slender, a figure of elegant despair perched precariously over the turbulent river below. "The reporter is here," someone in the growing crowd shouted. The desperate man turned his head to look at me. In that single glance, I knew my life would forever be tied to his. "Don't jump!" Voices roared around me, whipped away by the fierce wind howling across the bridge. But I barely heard them. My gaze was fixed on his face, and a profound shock vibrated through me. The man on the bridge was Caleb. He was 26, and I had interviewed him 3 years ago. Seeing him now just as I had seen him then was an experience that shook me to my core. I was a young reporter back then, fresh out of university where I'd landed a coveted spot in the journalism program thanks to an unexpectedly strong performance on my entrance exams. Graduating, I'd found a position at the provincial television station. With surprising ease, I remembered the day clearly 3 years prior. It was the day my internship ended and I officially became a full-time reporter. My colleagues had said, "Alara, let's go out after work tonight. Celebrate your promotion?" I had smiled and readily agreed. And then I got my first assignment as a full reporter, interview a fire hero. His name was Caleb. Hearing the name, I couldn't help but think of the legendary senior at my high school a year ahead of me, also named Caleb. In the tender age of first crushes, every girl in the city knew his name, true to its meaning, Chen Chong Lit, to worship/revere. He was widely admired. He was the star of our high school, tall, standing at 179 centimeters, loved playing basketball, undeniably handsome. He'd won math competitions 3 years in a row, was a provincial good student awardee, and played the piano beautifully. Caleb received an early admission offer to a prestigious university. I had been one of the many girls who secretly nursed a crush on him from afar. Sam, my photographer colleague, had filled me in on the details. Caleb had graduated the year before. While home resting, he witnessed a violent argument between his neighbors. A husband and wife were beating each other, their 2 young children watching. Terrified nearby, the wife, pushed to the edge, ran into the kitchen, turned on the gas and ignited it, causing a massive explosion. Caleb had rushed in, pushing the children out of harm's way just as the blast occurred, engulfing him in flames. He suffered extensive and severe burns across his body. His hands and legs were a mass of raw, blistered skin. What was most despicable, Sam told me, was that the family he saved packed up and vanished immediately afterward. They even said things like, "Who asked you to save us? Did I tell you to be a hero? Just die already. At least then you won't be asking for money." Sam recounted, shaking his head in disbelief. I gently approached Caleb's hospital room. I saw him sitting up in bed, his back towards me. "Hello," I said softly, announcing myself. "I'm Alara Jensen, a reporter from the provincial station." "Get out." His voice was raspy, harsh, utterly devoid of the warmth I remembered. Now, seeing him again on the bridge years later, I recognized the truth. The boy before me, scarred and barely recognizable as the person he once was indeed the academic star Caleb. And those eyes, intensely intelligent and piercingly sharp, I would never forget them. "I'm here to interview," I said. "Get out." His voice was stronger now, filled with a raw, desperate anger. As a reporter, I knew how to handle reluctant interviewees, how to find the angle that might persuade them. "They haven't compensated you, have they? And the treatment? It must have cost so much. Your parents must be struggling. This story needs public attention, Caleb. It could help you get the better treatment you need." My voice softened, almost pleading. "You were a good person. I want to help you." He turned then, looking directly at me, his gaze unsettling. "I'm a good person?" His voice was laced with bitter irony. "Then do good people get good things in return?" In that instant, his expression shifted, becoming twisted, almost grotesque with pain and rage. I was young and naive then, filled with a passionate idealism for the world. I didn't find him terrifying, only deeply tragic. Tragic for the world that could allow such suffering, and tragic for Caleb. Caleb eventually agreed to the interview. He had always been a smart person, assessing the situation with a chilling practicality. "I'm doing this for the money," he stated flatly. "I need donations. I've looked into it. Fixing these burns, especially on my face, will cost at least 1,000,000 yuan. He looked at me again, his gaze sharp and probing. "You said you wanted to help me?" Under the strange, hypnotic intensity of those eyes, I slowly nodded. He smiled, a twisted parody of his former charm. Then, "Come visit me often." I learned later that he had simply been testing me, seeing how long my seemingly genuine offer of kindness would last, if my empathy was as shallow as the world he now inhabited. I began visiting Caleb frequently. At first, we would just sit in silence, the weight of his injuries and despair heavy between us. But gradually he started talking to me, small conversations about what I'd eaten, about the sunshine outside. Even these brief exchanges brought a flicker of happiness to those around him. Caleb's mother, Martha, her eyes filled with unshed tears, would clasp my hands. "Alara, thank you. Thank you so much." And I meant it when I smiled and said it was nothing, because in those visits, beyond the professional duty of reporting, I felt I was providing some small, personal value. The secret crush of my youth remained unspoken, but being able to help Caleb like this, after everything, filled me with a quiet sense of joy. This quiet joy shattered one day, about 3 months into my visits. I arrived at Caleb's room as usual. "Hey Caleb, I brought you some fruit." He looked past the small basket in my hand to the bubble tea I was holding. I smiled protectively, shielding it. "Hey, don't look at mine. This is for me. I want some." His voice was flat, demanding. "No." I trailed off. Despite my efforts to act normally around him, the truth was he was different. His body was fragile. He couldn't just eat anything. His burned skin couldn't even regulate his body temperature properly. Suddenly, Caleb's eyes turned a dangerous bloodshot red. "Sit down. Now." My heart ached for him. "Cal." Before I could finish, he roughly pulled me towards him, my body pressed against his. "What's wrong?" he whispered, his voice low and mocking. "Scared." I froze, too startled to move. He was smiling, a twisted, taunting expression, like he was playing a cruel joke. He even leaned in, his face close to mine as if to kiss me. My brow furrowed instinctively, and I squeezed my eyes shut, turning my face away on a purely instinctive reflex. Caleb's warm breath fell on my cheek, but the kiss never came. The moment stretched on, agonizingly long. My heart hammered, trapped in a cage of mortifying awkwardness. After what felt like an eternity, I cautiously opened my eyes. The moment they opened, I saw the raw, cutting contempt in his eyes. He was challenging me, challenging the world. It was as if he was saying, "See? All your fine words, your proclaimed sincerity are meaningless. Easily exposed, fragile, crumbling at the slightest pressure." I thought Caleb had misunderstood something crucial. My visits were born of sympathy, maybe a lingering echo of a past crush, but in the 3 months we'd spent together, no deep, special feelings had developed. The Caleb of today was vastly different from the legend of our campus. His eyes were still striking, and beneath the scars, the bone structure of a handsome face remained. But looking closer, his skin was a roadmap of angry, puckered scars. Barely a patch remained untouched. Even the face that girls had once adored was now a source of horror. I was still in the phase of life where I dreamed of romance. As a television reporter, I interacted daily with attractive anchors and producers, and often people would say, "Alara, let us introduce you to someone." My colleagues and friends were always trying to set me up with charming, promising young men. Compared to them, Caleb was trapped in his dim room, lacking even the courage to step outside. He felt utterly isolated, a stark contrast to the bright, hopeful world I inhabited. Caleb gave a bitter, self-deprecating laugh. "I know. You look down on me." "I never thought that," I said, surprised by the sting of his words. Unexpectedly, Caleb didn't argue. He simply looked at me, his gaze unwavering. "Alara, I look down on you too." My heart sank and I met his gaze. For a moment, time seemed to rewind. He was the dazzling boy sprinting across the green field, the unattainable legend. And I was just an ordinary high school student. Even now, his life shattered, seemingly lost in the mud, there was a core of fierce pride in him. "Alara, don't look at me like that. Don't make me feel like you're looking at a maggot." I stared at him, listening as he spoke, each word sharp and deliberate. Dirty. Hiding in the dark. A source of nothing but trouble. Isn't that what a maggot is? He turned away from me, his voice softer but firm. Alara, just go. Don't come back. I stood frozen, unsure how to respond. I lingered at the doorway, watching him. His body was tense, hunched in the shadows, lost in thought. All right, I said finally, my voice small. I'll go. That visit ended abruptly, leaving a bitter taste. As I was leaving, Mrs. Martha, her eyes brimming with tears, intercepted me. Only then did I learn what else had happened to Caleb. After the accident, the company Caleb was supposed to join decided they didn't want him anymore. She explained, her voice heavy with sadness. They tried to avoid it since he was such a star student at university, president of the student union, scholarship winner. They'd put a lot of effort into recruiting him, but it couldn't drag on forever. For a famous corporation to renege on an offer, especially when Caleb was injured saving others, was morally reprehensible, but legally they found a way. Recently they had sent a representative with a small sum as a gesture of sympathy, and after some carefully worded platitudes, gently persuaded Caleb to sign a document agreeing to terminate the employment agreement. Caleb had been clinging to the hope of gathering $1,000,000 yuan, of getting the extensive plastic surgery he needed, just so he could look somewhat normal. Again re-enter society, get back on his path. Now even that hope was gone. He didn't want to admit defeat, but reality was relentlessly crushing him. Little Alara, Mrs. Martha continued, her voice breaking, there's something else we didn't tell you. Your uncle and I are so grateful to you. But you didn't know Caleb had a girlfriend, did you? They started dating in their first year of university. She went to the same school. They planned to move to the city together after graduation, work hard for a couple of years, and then get married. She told me they had been deeply in love. But after the accident, the girl changed completely. Seeing Caleb in the hospital, severely burned, barely clinging to life, she broke up with him. Just like that. Mrs. Martha looked at me, her face etched with pain. How can people be so cold? Yes, Caleb was badly hurt, but couldn't she have waited a little? Just given him some time. It was into this devastating reality that I had walked months ago. I had promised to visit Caleb often, a promise everyone, including Caleb himself, likely dismissed as a reporter's polite gesture. They never expected me to actually come week after week for so long. Mrs. Martha cried. Little Alara, thank you. Truly thank you. I went back to see Caleb the next day. He seemed surprised to see me. He was sitting up in bed, propped uncomfortably against the wall, holding a book. It was an English copy of Jane Eyre. I recognized it, the story of a scarred, damaged man finding love and acceptance, eventually overcoming prejudice. Seeing him read that book felt significant. Good mood. I asked, trying to keep my tone light. He didn't look up. Why are you back? To see you, of course. I tried to sound cheerful, casual. Unexpectedly, he slammed the book shut. Get out, he barked, his voice sharp. A sudden sting of hurt welled up, and against my will my eyes filled with tears. Caleb froze. He turned his head away from me, looking out the window, refusing to meet my gaze. His face was scarred but not entirely disfigured. The right side, turned towards me now, was relatively untouched, the curve of his cheek and jawline still perfectly formed. I thought, the Creator is indeed fair. He gave Caleb a brave soul, then broke him but didn't take everything. I slowly walked towards him, but the next second Caleb spun around, looking at me with an intense, complex gaze filled with an unspoken, barely suppressed emotion that terrified me. Caleb! I gasped, startled. He grabbed my hand, pulling me towards the bed. His eyes were wild, red-rimmed, radiating a palpable aggression. I decided to let you go. Why did you come back? He bit out the words, his teeth clenched. I was terrified, frozen, tears streaming down my face uncontrollably. Caleb, let go. Please let go. Why should I? If you want to go to hell with me, then come on. His voice was rough, desperate. Then I felt his lips on mine, warm and rough. He was kissing me. Tears streamed faster now, hot against my cheeks. Caleb, you're crazy. Let go. You can't. You can't do this to me. He kissed me like a caged beast, with a desperate, violent hunger that left the taste of blood on my lips. My stomach churned. I didn't hate him, I didn't even dislike him, but I was so incredibly afraid, so repulsed by the desperation and violence in his kiss. I wanted to throw up. I don't know how I escaped his room. Caleb in the end didn't truly hurt me. I heard him fall to the floor as I ran out, his cries of self-recrimination, his guttural roars of pain and helplessness against his fate, followed by the sound of things being smashed. Ah! Ah! I couldn't bear to hear those sounds. I couldn't stay. I ran from Caleb's house, tears streaming down my face, ignoring Mrs. Martha's pleas as she chased after me. Little Ilara, please, I'm begging you. Forgive him. Don't give up on him. Just give him time to recover from this. Please. I ran heartbroken without looking back. Mrs. Martha came to the television station looking for me later, but she couldn't find me. After that, Caleb and his family seemed to vanish from my life. I deliberately stopped following his story, no longer checking for updates. I only heard snippets from Sam, the photographer, that Caleb had received some donations thanks to my report, that he'd been awarded a provincial medal for his bravery, that he'd undergone dozens of surgeries including facial reconstruction. I hoped that he had indeed started a new life as he wished, that good people finally got their reward. 3 years passed. If not for the scene unfolding before me on the bridge today, I would have continued believing that. Now on the magnificent Century Bridge, high above the vast, dark river, someone shouted, "Young man, don't do anything rash. Get down." My eyes were fixed on Caleb sitting on the railing. His face was expressionless, staring at the water below. I pushed through the crowd like a madwoman, shouting, "Don't jump." Caleb heard my voice. His back stiffened for a moment, then he slowly turned his head. The light had gone from his eyes. There was no hint of his former mischief. None of that dark, complex emotion. Not even a flicker of anger. Only profound despair and resignation. What could have happened to bring him to this point? "Caleb, it's me. Ilara. Do you remember me? It's Ilara. Come down, let's talk, please." Caleb remained motionless. He didn't even offer the twisted smile he sometimes gave me years ago. He simply sat there, his feet dangling over the void, then slowly turned his head back to gaze at the river. A wave of coldness washed over me. He felt like a stranger. This was Caleb, the boy who had been the dream of every girl in this city. Tears began to fall again. "Caleb, don't do anything. Listen to me." But Caleb wasn't listening. I didn't even know what I was trying to say, only that my body was moving on instinct, pushing through the crowd, needing to get closer to him. Closer, just a little closer. I was terrified he would just fall, that he would vanish from the world as if he had never existed. Such a wonderful person brought to this terrible pass because he tried to save others. It was too cruel. Driven by impulse, I broke through the last of the onlookers, ignoring their shouts, reaching his side. "Caleb, don't jump. Even if you want to die. Can you give me a hug first?" I yelled the last words, my voice cracking. I saw a flicker of shock, of surprise in his lifeless expression. I can't describe the complexity of emotions contained in that single look. Gathering all my courage, I stepped forward and wrapped my arms around him. "Caleb, Caleb." I clung to his waist, burying my face in his back. I knew how dangerous this was. If his emotions overwhelmed him, if he panicked, we would both fall into the churning river, our lives ending together. But thankfully I felt his throat bob. He didn't violently resist. When I wrapped my arms around him, he instinctively tightened his grip on the bridge railing. He was protecting me. He didn't want to drag me down, didn't want me to die with him. I sobbed, holding on tightly. Just then, rescue personnel swarmed forward, pulling us both back onto the safety of the bridge deck. "Ilara." His voice was rough, dry, thick with emotion. He looked at me with a deep, aching guilt. I knelt beside him, crying, utterly undone. After work that day, I didn't go back to the station. I stayed with Caleb. I waited while he was checked by medics, while he gave his statement to the police. Afterward, I offered to drive him home. Caleb sat in my car, silent. 3 years had changed us both immensely. I tried to chat with him to sound normal like before. But Caleb said nothing, more reserved and inscrutable than ever. As we approached his old neighborhood, he suddenly spoke. "Stop the car." "Caleb, we're almost there." I said stop. His sharp tone startled me and I braked hard, afraid he might do something drastic. But when my eyes met his, I saw not anger, but a raw vulnerability beneath the surface. He took a shaky breath, his pride momentarily shattered. "Wrong place." "What?" Caleb sighed deeply. The house. We sold it last year. His voice was quiet, revealing a wound. The new rental. It's over in Qingshan village. I didn't know what to say. It felt like he was peeling back a layer of scarred skin, exposing a fresh wound. He had moved from the heart of the city to a crowded, less affluent village on the outskirts. Without a word, I made a U-turn and headed in the opposite direction. The drive was silent. We drove as far as the car could go into the village's maze-like alleys before he finally spoke. Just drop me here. I'll walk the rest of the way. As he got out, he hesitated. Then his lips moved. Thank you, he murmured. I watched from the car as Caleb walked away, a slight limp in his step, and a fresh wave of sadness washed over me. On impulse, I got out of the car and followed him. He walked ahead, I followed behind. We walked for a long time. The surroundings grew darker, the narrow alleys dimly lit, until even the streetlights disappeared. Finally, he stopped, turning back, his voice edged with frustration. Stop following me. He seemed surprised by my stubbornness. I wasn't afraid of his coldness anymore. I'm worried about you, I said softly. I wasn't the naive young woman from 3 years ago. I met his gaze directly, unafraid. After a moment, Caleb sighed, a sound of weary resignation. He turned away again, walking on without another word. But there was a hint of compromise in the set of his shoulders. I almost smiled. We both tacitly avoided mentioning the incident from 3 years ago, the kiss, the desperate words. From the moment he gripped that railing to save me, I had understood the depth of his internal conflict then. He probably hadn't intended to hurt me. But when faced with genuine feeling versus feigned pity, was it easy to tell the difference? Perhaps he couldn't tell himself. This man, wounded so deeply by the world, still held a core of kindness towards it. But he was relentlessly cruel to himself. I followed Caleb for several days and finally understood the full scope of his struggles. After recovering and undergoing plastic surgery, he had found new work. But reality was harsh. Such severe injuries left indelible differences. He wasn't like fully able-bodied people. There were many reasons for his dismissals from subsequent jobs, reasons Caleb didn't articulate, but I could infer. If life is determined to break you, the only way to win is to keep fighting. And Caleb never stopped trying. Until one day, he came home to find his mother lying on the floor unconscious. That was true despair. He could bear his own suffering, but not the suffering of those he loved most. My family sold the house to pay for my treatment, he told me one evening, his voice flat with exhaustion. We thought things would get better once I started working, that we'd slowly rebuild. But then my mom was diagnosed with kidney failure. The doctor said she needs a transplant. Without dialysis, she has maybe 2 years at most. They were hiding it from me. His family was already deeply in debt from his medical bills. Relatives had grown distant, offering little help or refusing outright. Desperate, Caleb had gone back to the family he saved, hoping they would lend him some money. Their first words upon seeing him? You're still alive? Their faces were filled with mockery, disgust, even hatred that he hadn't just died and disappeared. When he asked for money, the husband, just as he had years ago to his wife, beat Caleb. They cursed him and Mrs. Martha, telling them to die, to stop haunting them. That was your choice back then. It's been so long, and you're still coming here asking for money. Caleb's anger finally boiled over. He lunged forward. Past. It's past for you. The people who had caused so much suffering had moved on, living normal lives, while for the victim, the tragedy was still unfolding. His body, a result of his heroism, now betrayed him with chronic pain. On cold, damp days, his bones ached unbearably, like being scraped by a knife, inch by agonizing inch. It hurt. So much. But the deepest pain wasn't physical. It was in his soul. Caleb picked up a piece of bread, eating it listlessly. Even after surgery, I'm not exactly normal. My dad has been in the hospital a few times from overwork. Our whole family is on medication. If I can't find the money soon, my mom's dialysis will stop. He looked at me, his eyes hollow. Alara, what use am I in this world? I'm just a burden. This was the real reason he wanted to die. My heart ached. I reached out and took his hand. To me, you are an amazing person. Brave, never giving up. If you face a mountain, you'd invent dynamite to blast through it, not let it crush you. You think too highly of me, he said. But I saw the briefest hint of a smile touch his lips as he looked down. "It's not that I think too highly of you," I insisted. "It's that you are that good." I told him without hiding anything about my teenage crush about watching him from afar all those years ago. Caleb looked at me surprised. He had believed his life was meaningless, but in that moment, perhaps a new meaning began to stir. I looked him squarely in the eye. "Caleb, the world hasn't been fair to you. The only thing I can do is try to make it a little fairer." I launched a follow-up report, appealing for public attention to Caleb's family's plight. I contacted hospitals, found specialists for Mrs. Martha, helped with admissions. Outside of work, I dedicated myself to assisting them, spending time at the hospital, bringing Mrs. Martha homemade porridge. "Mrs. Martha, I made chicken porridge for you today. Try some." Caleb would watch me, his eyes filled with gratitude. I continued to accompany him, walking him home every evening. We were like friends, the unspoken incident from 3 years ago hanging between us, never mentioned. But I saw that the way he looked at me had changed. It was more intense now, more revealing than during my early visits. And this time I wasn't afraid. I always smiled at him, telling him, "Caleb, you are truly amazing." See, the boy I'd crushed on, despite all the suffering, still retained that fundamental goodness. "I'm thinking of starting a business," he announced one day. "I completely support it. Do you need any help?" "No," he said, but the look in his eyes told me he appreciated the offer. Caleb didn't say much, but I knew he was pouring all his formidable intellect and determination into this new venture. He utilized a government program that provided startup funds for university graduates. He started from scratch, building a service-oriented company, and he proved me right. He was steady, thoughtful, insightful. Within a short time, the company was profitable and attracting talented partners. Caleb's business grew rapidly. 2 years flew by. Mrs. Martha's health stabilized, and she eventually received a kidney transplant. The surgery was successful. As the doctors moved her to the recovery ward, Caleb stood by the door, turned to me, and said with deep sincerity, "Thank you, Alara." He was 28, I was 27. He wore a crisp white shirt and dark trousers, glasses perched on his nose. His face, though still marked by the surgeries, was handsome in a refined way, his demeanor captivating. Everyone in the hospital corridor was looking at us. I grinned back, unable to resist a playful retort. "Yes, you should thank me." "Humph." I laughed, the wind from the corridor blowing my hair across my face, perhaps momentarily blurring his vision. The series of reports I did on Caleb became a landmark in my journalistic career. Everyone assumed my dedication over the past 2 years was purely for the sake of a compelling story, that I was an excellent reporter who had successfully documented a man pulled back from the brink of despair to build a new life. But I knew the truth. It wasn't just for the story. My continued presence, my support, was because in the quiet moments of our time together, I saw Caleb's incredible resilience. In those days spent walking alongside him through hardship, witnessing his unwavering spirit, his mental fortitude, his immense perseverance, and his capacity for forgiveness towards a world that had wronged him, I was in awe. I watched him make peace with a terrible reality and emerge stronger, tempered by the fire. In countless small moments I fell deeply in love with him. From the admiration of a teenage crush, it had evolved into the profound respect and love of an adult. I no longer loved him for his brilliance or his handsome face, but for his unbroken spirit, for the entirety of who he was. I loved him. But Caleb seemed to have no intention of moving our relationship forward. The more successful he became, the more he treated me with a polite, almost distant affection, carefully maintaining boundaries. I often saw young women at his office making overtures. He seemed to have reclaimed his former aura of popularity. People would ask him, "Mr. Chun, when are you going to settle down? Your office doorstep is practically worn down by hopeful women." Caleb would just smile. "That must mean the business isn't strong enough, or the office isn't big enough yet." He was smoother now, less sharp than before. I could see he had no interest in marriage. When I arrived at his office one day, Caleb introduced me to someone, saying, "This is my sister." I smiled later, teasingly. "Sister?" "Yes," he confirmed, his expression unchanging. Driving home that night, I sat in Caleb's car and deliberately complained, "My dad is pushing me to go on blind dates again." I saw his hands tighten on the steering wheel, just for a second. My dad said, Alara, you're not bad looking, your job is stable, you're not a weirdo. You're the kind of person who wants to adopt every stray dog on the street, so why don't you have a boyfriend? I continued, watching him from the corner of my eye. He even said, Alara, you're an embarrassment to the Jensen name. I waited, hoping for a reaction. But he simply said, in a non-committal way. I pushed further. So, should I go on the blind date? There was a long silence in the car. Then I heard Caleb's voice, quiet and steady. Okay. When I got out of the car, I slammed the door. I didn't know what I was angry at, his indifference, his apparent lack of understanding. I wanted to scream, Caleb, where is the man who pinned me to the bed and kissed me years ago? I couldn't believe he had no feelings for me. If he truly didn't like me, why did he always seem to find reasons to happen to be walking the same way I was heading home, just for a glimpse? I made a plan. It wasn't complicated. It involved alcohol. I deliberately got myself drunk and went to the foot of his apartment building. I stood there and yelled up at his balcony, Caleb. It was late and my voice echoed through the quiet night. The whole building probably heard me. Caleb rushed down, clearly thinking something was wrong. He was wearing his house slippers, no coat, just a thin shirt in the chilly spring night. I looked at his worried face and smiled drunkenly. Caleb, I have something to tell you. You're drunk. I know. Otherwise, how could I possibly be doing something so utterly mortifying? I reached out to take his hand, but he stepped back, avoiding my touch. My heart sank. Caleb, I'm cold. I need a hug. I'll go get my keys and drive you home. No, I don't want to. Alara. Caleb. I took a deep breath, gathering my courage. I like you. I'm in love with you. Caleb froze, completely still. My drunken eyes were bright, shining up at him foolishly. Can we be together? It's been so long, Caleb. I've waited for so long. My heart ached. I was desperate. Caleb remained motionless, like he was made of stone. In the darkness, I thought I heard him take a ragged breath, a deep sigh. He wasn't saying yes. Tears welled up. The alcohol was hitting me hard. I stumbled back a step. Caleb, perhaps fearing I'd fall, finally reached out and steadied me. I seized the chance and collapsed into his arms. The moment I leaned against his chest, I heard him whisper, Alara, I'm sorry. I don't know how I ended up in his car later. The whole building probably knew I'd been rejected. I pretended to be asleep, but I turned my face to the window and silently cried. I knew with a crushing certainty that there was no future for Caleb and me. I must have actually fallen asleep at some point. Later, I was woken by a wetness on my lips. It was Caleb kissing me. His kisses landed on my forehead, light and reverent. And the warmth on my face was his tears. Caleb was crying. He had rejected me and he was crying. He kept repeating, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. My heart was a solid block of pain suffocating me. After that night, I didn't see Caleb again. I went on the blind date my father arranged. The man was a civil servant in the Education Bureau, the same age as me, already promoted to a decent position, young and promising. He seemed to like me. He called and texted often. Alara, want to see a movie after work? He asked me out about 10 times. I went 3 times. What choice did I have? I couldn't stay single forever. I was trying to move on to disentangle my feelings from Caleb. This was adulthood practicality, but there was an empty, aching space in my heart. On my 3rd date with the civil servant, I saw Caleb. He was standing under a tree near the cinema entrance, smoking, his eyes red. When he saw us walk out together, he put out the cigarette and just stared, unmoving. Alara, do you know him? My date asked. Yes, I said, taking a deep breath, forcing a smile. He's my brother. I saw Caleb's fist clench when he heard the word brother. His chest rose and fell, as if he were fighting to control something inside. My date greeted him. Hey, brother. Caleb didn't say a word. He just turned and walked away. My heart twisted in my chest, a sharp, painful ache. I didn't follow him. I was too tired of this chase. I had given up on pursuing him, until Mrs. Martha called me. Little Alara, are you free? Could you come sit with me for a while? After her surgery, I had visited Mrs. Martha often. She felt like a second mother. But after drawing a line between Caleb and myself, I hadn't been back. Partly from fear of the pain, partly from not knowing what to say. But our bond was strong. I agreed. When I arrived, Mrs. Martha said, come in, come in. Caleb isn't home. I felt a small wave of relief. But then she led me towards Caleb's room. I stopped at the doorway. Mrs. Martha, I don't think it's appropriate. Our relationship wasn't what it used to be. As adults approaching 30, there needed to be boundaries. Mrs. Martha insisted. Come in, please. I just want to show you something. Since we'd reconnected, I hadn't been inside Caleb's room in this new apartment. It was laid out similarly to the old one: a bed, a bookshelf, and a piano. On the piano was a photo frame. Inside it was my picture. Caleb started playing piano when he was a child, Mrs. Martha said softly. He reached level 10 by junior high. This piano is his most treasured possession. After the accident, he couldn't play anymore. But even when things were hardest, he wouldn't sell it. And this photo placed on the piano the thing he loved most. Its meaning to him was clear. My hand trembled as I picked it up. It wasn't a standard photo, but a printout of a web screenshot. I was a news reporter. Sometimes I appeared on camera. During live reports, my name would appear on screen. Reporter, Alara Jensen. I remembered this specific report. It was one I did during those 3 years after I had left his life. He had been watching me all along. All this time he had been paying attention. All those years ago I had been the one in his heart, the one he couldn't have. I looked at the picture of myself, smiling, holding the microphone, looking so happy and naive. Tears streamed down my face, fierce and uncontrollable. Mrs. Martha's voice was gentle. I know about you too, little Alara. But Caleb, he suffered more. He told me the world held nothing but cruelty for him, except for you. You were like a light in his life. When he wanted to give up, you pulled him back. When he was in the deepest pain, you didn't abandon him. When he was at his worst, you were his support. I had reignited Caleb's life, made him reluctant to leave this world. He had stayed alive, not for the world itself, but because he couldn't bear to leave me. Caleb always felt like a burden to us, his family. Mrs. Martha continued, her voice filled with sadness. Even now that things are better, that hasn't changed. His injuries were severe. Even though he looks better on the surface, on damp days the pain is unbearable. The price he paid for saving those people is one he has to pay for a lifetime. Being married to him, it would be difficult. Little Alara, he doesn't want to be a burden to you. He was afraid, even more so, that I was only in his life out of pity. The Caleb of the past, the golden boy, had fallen. He had known despair, even entertained dark thoughts. But when he truly loved someone, he only wanted to protect them, to prioritize their happiness, even if it meant stepping back, stepping away entirely for their sake. Caleb didn't want to drag me down into his struggles. But love wasn't about being dragged down. It was about standing together. I wiped my tears and sent Caleb a text message. Caleb, there's a little secret I've never told you. Since high school, the only boy, the only man I've ever loved is you. This feeling has nothing to do with saving you, nothing to do with pity. Your strength of spirit far outweighs any physical scars. I'm not afraid of the future. I only want to walk beside you. After a long time, Caleb called me. It was a voice call. I answered. There was only silence on the line. Caleb pinned me against the door of my apartment. When I opened it, he followed me in, and before I could react, his kisses rained down on me, urgent and demanding. He laced his fingers tightly with mine. Let's talk inside. The lights weren't on in the apartment. He kissed my neck, his touch full of longing, the familiar scent of pine wood on his skin. I turned my face away, unable to look at him, taking refuge in the darkness where he couldn't fully see my face either. Do good people get good things? 5 years later, he asked me that question again. I reached up and touched the scars on his face, the ones that had once terrified me. Of course they do. Look, I'm your good thing. Caleb paused for a moment, then a soft chuckle escaped him. Yeah, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. A good embrace. And finally, truly, he held me close. Lost in his embrace, I thought over and over how that single glance on the bridge years ago had been the moment I knew my life was irrevocably given to him. Later that night, half asleep, I felt Caleb holding me tightly. I had a dream. In the dream, I was back in my high school. I walked past the sports field and saw Caleb. He was dribbling a basketball, sprinting across the court, shining brightly amongst everyone else. As if by telepathy, he stopped, his gaze cutting through the crowd, finding me. He was the star of the senior class and I was just an ordinary girl with a ponytail. He smiled at me. "Hey little Alara." "Hello." The end.